This video covers the 30 kayaking trips that I did throughout 2024. We were a bit slow off the blocks in 2024 and didn't start kayaking until April. I covered about 190 miles over the 30 trips, which was an average of about 6.3 miles per trip. This isn't too bad considering that the filming slows me up a bit, plus I'm not exactly the fittest. Anyhow, let's get on with a quick run through of my 2024 kayaking adventures. Our first paddle of 2024 was a 5 miles trip from Caswell Bay to Mumbles on the South Gower coast. After passing Langland Bay, Rotherslade and Bracelet Bay, we rounded the iconic Mumbles Head with its famous lighthouse. We paddled into the western end of Swansea Bay and under Mumbles Pier before landing at Nabrock on the bustling Mumbles waterfront. The 6.5 miles kayak from Oxwich to Caswell Bay in the South Gower coast started on the 3 miles long sands of Oxwich Bay. After a stop off at Three Cliffs Bay, we continued past the former smuggling haunts of Puttley Beach and Brandy Cove. We finally landed at the slipway at Caswell Bay Beach near to high tide. This 3 miles trip around Mumbles Head near Swansea was a trial paddle to use my Ituit X100 on my own as a solo kayak. While the Ituit X100 is best used as a tandem, it can also be used as a very roomy solo. Mumbles Head is a great place to paddle around high tide. This 8 miles paddled from Swansea to Port Talbot was an evening trip on Swansea Bay. We paddled along Jersey Marine Beach with a backdrop of the wide sweep of Swansea Bay. After stopping at the mouth of the Neath Estuary, we continued along the 3 miles long Aberavon Beach. We eventually landed later than planned in the darkness at Port Talbot. Sheldon and I enjoyed this 5 miles paddle from Port Tynan to Oxwich on the South Gower coast. We timed it around Oxwich Point near to high tide to avoid the tidal race that you get there when the tide is running. The Gower Peninsula in southwest Wales has some amazing scenery to paddle past and is one of our favourite paddling locations. We landed at a busy Oxwich beach and enjoyed a post-paddle beer at the Ship Inn in Port Tynan. The sea conditions on this 9 miles paddle from Port Talbot to Rest Bay near to Porthcawl turned out to be much more challenging than the forecast had suggested. After being buffeted by the rough seas for the duration of the trip, Archie and I were somewhat relieved when we eventually landed back on terra firma at Rest Bay. The 7.5 miles trip from Shepherd's Patch to the Pilot Inn was to paddle the final section of the Gloucester and Sharpness canal that we'd yet to do. The canal runs for 16 miles from Gloucester down to Sharpness, and it's a great waterway with no locks, although you do have to duck under the swing bridges. Archie and I enjoyed a post-paddle beer at the Pilot Inn at the end of the route. Our 12 miles paddle from Tewkesbury to Gloucester on the mighty Severn River was a great route through the Gloucestershire countryside. Check out our Severn River playlist for our videos of our paddles on the Severn, the longest river in the UK. We landed just upstream of the historic Gloucester docks and enjoyed a post-paddle beer at the Red Lion in Waynload. This 5 miles paddle started on the Mill Avon in the middle of historic Tewkesbury before taking us onto the Old Avon and then the Severn River. After our first experience of paddling through a lock at Upper Load, we explored the bottom end of the Mill Avon before landing at Lower Load just downstream of Tewkesbury. I enjoyed this 4 mile circular paddle from Aberystwyth up past Clarick and back on Cardigan Bay. I was in Aberystwyth for a reunion with old university friends, and this paddle was a great way to blow off the cobwebs after a heavy night out. Cardigan Bay offers some of the best coastal paddling you can experience, and the vibrant town of Aberystwyth is arguably the jewel in the crown on the bay. This 7 mile circular kayak on Cardigan Bay from Newquay to Cwmtyddy and back was quite an achievement after 3 nights drinking for a reunion with old university friends in Aberystwyth. By the time we paddled back into Newquay Harbour in the evening sun, we were completely cured of our hangovers. This 4 mile circular trip from Tenby South Beach took me past the magnificent seaside town of Tenby on the Pembrokeshire coast. After paddling around the old town, I went on to explore some of the coastline between Tenby and Saundersfoot. I even had time to paddle around Tenby Harbour on the way back. We really enjoyed this 9 miles route from Lougher to Buryport on the Lougher Estuary. The Lougher Estuary is one of the biggest estuaries in Wales, and it's a great waterway to paddle as long as you plan it around the tide times. We have done a guide to estuary kayaking video on our Kayaking Guides playlist, although even we still manage to ground out on sandbanks ourselves sometimes. I was back up in Tewkesbury on one of the hottest days of the year for this 4 mile circular trip on the Avon River. It was up in the mid-30s and I was absolutely cooking on the river. I obviously had to rehydrate myself with the Royal Hot Pole Wetherspoons in Tewkesbury after the paddle. I got a taxi to Upton-on-Severn and paddled the 7 miles back downstream to Tewkesbury on the Severn River. It was another scorching day, and if I hadn't been wearing my captain's hat and had my cider rations to keep me hydrated, then I think I'd have had sunstroke. After dodging boats of all shapes and sizes on the Severn River all day, I turned off into the Avon River and paddled back into Tewkesbury, landing near to the Healings Mill building. This 10 miles trip from Portynan to Rhossili on the Gower coast had to be one of our best paddles of 2024. We passed landmarks such as Culver Hole, Overton Mere, Mewslade Bay, Paviland Cave and Fall Bay. The scenery was sublime as we rounded the iconic Worm's Head, which is the most westerly point on the Gower. After being entertained by some of the seals on Worm's Head, the finale was landing at the stunning Rhossili Bay in the evening sun, certainly a trip to remember. I met fellow YouTuber Persistent Pete at Brockware for this short 3-mile circular paddle on the Wye River. It was great to meet up with Persistent Pete and to see his e-propulsion Vaquita electric kayak motor and also his Blue Wave Cruiser inflatable kayak. Watching him zooming up and down the Wye River, I have to say that I was an instant convert to e-kayaking and will be getting myself an electric motor for my kayaks in 2025. Next was this 9 miles trip from Ferryside to Carmarthen on the Towie estuary in Carmarthenshire, southwest Wales. The Towie is a great estuary to paddle, and with the assistance of the incoming tide, we flew up the estuary almost as quickly as Persistent Pete with his kayak motor on full speed. We paddled into the historic town of Carmarthen with its Roman and Norman ruins, and landed on the quay near to high tide. The 6.5 miles kayak from Hay-on-Wye down to Glasbury was on the Wye River, one of my favourite paddling rivers. Captain Kiva came out of retirement to put in a rare appearance. Check out our Wye Valley playlist on our channel for our videos of our trips along this amazing kayaking river. We struggled with very low water levels, but it was a good get-together. I paddled this 8 miles route from Bidford-on-Avon to Evesham during one of the last spells of hot weather that we had in 2024. The scenery was stunning as I paddled through the Vale of Evesham. This was quite physically a taxing trip though, due to the 4 weirs and locks that I had to portage around. 3 of them were hard going, requiring me to get out onto and launch off of walls approaching the locks. It's just as well that I'm as agile as a cat. I landed in the historic town of Evesham, more worn out from portaging around locks and weirs than paddling. This 5 miles route from Stratford-upon-Avon to Welford-on-Avon was a shorter one, partly due to me being worn out from the trip the day before. There were only 2 locks and weirs to portage around on this Avon River trip. Check out our Shakespeare's Avon playlist on our channel for videos of our trips along the Avon River in Warwickshire, Worcestershire and Gloucestershire. The scenery was again stunning as the Avon wound through farmland and meadows. I landed at the 4 Alls pub above Binton Bridge at Welford-on-Avon for a well-deserved post-paddle beer. This 4.5 miles route from Leamington Spa to Warwick was the 3rd trip that I did when I stayed up in Warwickshire back in October. I started on the Leam River and paddled through the middle of Leamington Spa. I joined up with the larger Avon River and paddled down towards Warwick. After paddling down the Avon River past St Nicholas's Park in Warwick, I got a great view of Warwick Castle from the river near to the end of the trip. I was back on Swansea Bay for this 5 miles round trip from Mumbles to West Cross and back with Paul and Kerry, who I'd got in touch with via one of the kayaking Facebook groups. It was great to meet up with them and to compare how Kerry's Sea Kayak and Paul's Ituit X500 drop-stitch inflatable kayak compared to my own Aquatech drop-stitch inflatable kayak. I met up with Kerry and Paul again for this 11 miles round trip in Pembrokeshire from land shipping up the Western Cleddau towards Haverfordwest and back. The Cleddau River and its tributaries are a great waterway to paddle if you were down in the Pembrokeshire area. I upload videos of my trips on the Cleddau and its tributaries to the Cleddau River playlist on my channel. Paul kindly gave me a go with his Ituit X500 for the return trip and it felt faster and tracked better than my Aquatech kayak, if a bit less stable. Archie and I really enjoyed this 8 miles trip from Nantgaredig to Carmarthen on the Towie River in Carmarthenshire, southwest Wales. We used a sandbank-style optimal tandem drop-stitch inflatable kayak. Check out our Towie River playlist for videos of our trips on the Towie River. On this trip, we transitioned from the non-tidal to the tidal sections of the Towie River, and we landed in the shadow of Carmarthen Castle at the quay near to high tide. This 3 mile circular trip on the Swansea Canal didn't quite go to plan. According to the Go Paddling and the Canal and River Trust websites, 5 miles of the Swansea Canal was navigable, so we planned to do a 10-mile round trip. However, after about a mile and a half, the canal became overgrown and impassable. Hopefully they'll clear the rest of the canal one day, since it's a nice route. I was backed on Mumbles yet again for this 4.5 miles round trip around Mumbles Head and some of the western end of Swansea Bay. You often get a tidal race around Mumbles Head which churns the sea up at certain times of the day, but if you paddle it near to high tide, then it's a great place to paddle. I really enjoyed this 7 miles round trip from Lawrenny Quay to Carew and back on the Carew River in Pembrokeshire. The Carew River is a tributary of the larger Cleddau River. I paddled upstream with the incoming tide, and after exploring Radford Pill, I continued up to the Carew Castle and Tidal Mill. I then turned around and paddled back downstream with the outgoing tide, landing back at Lawrenny Yacht Station at Lawrenny Quay as the sun gradually set in the west. This 5-mile circular paddle around Cardiff Bay was with a view to getting footage illustrating the difference in the tracking of one of my kayaks by adding an extra skeg to its hull. I paddled past Penarth Marina and up some of the Ely River before turning back into Cardiff Bay. Cardiff Bay is a great area to paddle when it's not windy. It's non-tidal due to the Cardiff Bay Barrage. Last but not least was this 5-mile circular kayak from Bury Port across to Woodford Point and back on the Lough estuary with Kerry, Paul and Fergus on a very murky day. We paddled around the renowned Woodford Point lighthouse, and Kerry and Fergus give us a demonstration of their navigation skills using their compasses. We paddled around Bury Port Harbour before landing on Bury Port Beach, where Paul had an unplanned swim while surfing the waves. As you can see, I paddled an eclectic range of waterways during 2024 and had some great adventures on the rivers, canals, estuaries and stretches of coast that I paddled. I've uploaded reviews of the kayaks that I used in these trips to the product reviews playlist of my channel. I've also uploaded videos of most of the trips undertaken to the various playlists relating to the routes, namely the playlists on my channel for the Wales coast, the Shakespeare's Avon, the Severn River, the Towie River and the Gloucester Sharpness Canal. Looking forward to 2025. This year I plan to complete at least half of the remaining sections of the Wales coast which I've yet to paddle. I also plan to do the remaining sections of the Severn and Avon rivers that I've not yet paddled. I also have other plans for 2025, including paddling some other rivers and canals, getting an electric kayak motor and potentially some new kayaks. Anyhow, I hope you've also managed to get some great paddles in during 2024. Let's hope we all stay safe and healthy and have even more paddling adventures in 2025.